Okay, sorry. Hi everyone.
Wait, just give it just a sec.
Okay.
Let everyone roll in. We just started the broadcast. Just let everyone kind of roll in for a second. Feel free to say you're here in the comments.
Yes, I would like to.
Okay, we're rolling. Okay, Nomachat, take it away.
Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Nomachat. Other people in Kansas City know me as Nunu as well. So, we decided to do this event because, as many of you may have known, Alive and Well did an immigration and trauma event last year on this topic, but we felt like it was important to focus on the experience for Black immigrants because of the intersection between race and immigration puts us in a much more unique experience. So first, I think I'm going to just focus on just introducing Alive and Well. So I'm a member of the steering committee for Alive and Well, and Alive and Well is a nonprofit based across the state of Missouri. The mission is to use the science of trauma, toxic stress, and resiliency alongside collective community wisdom to create urgent, disruptive social change. This is accomplished through community-based solutions to addressing trauma. One way is by creating events like this one that center those that are directly impacted. We'd like to thank Barasa of African Culture Center and Advocates for Immigrant Rights and Reconciliation, or AIR, for assisting us. Before we get into our facilitated discussion, we'll first hear from Layla Zaidi, the AmeriCorps member with Alive and Well, to speak about trauma awareness.
Okay, everyone, thanks for joining us today. I'm seeing a lot more people kind of roll through in our live stream, so that's really exciting. So today, before we invite our panelists to join, I'd just like to frame our conversation alongside the mission of Alive and Well Communities. So today, we're asking audience members to make connections between trauma and Black immigrant experiences in Kansas City. By connecting the dots between lived experiences and trauma, we can identify and disrupt systems that perpetuate harm. At Alive and Well, we don't identify single events as traumatic. Rather, we think of trauma as consisting of 3 E's. The event, which is one-time or ongoing, the experience, which depends on the individual, and the effects, which refers to the physical, mental, and emotional effects of trauma across the lifespan. We ask audience members as they listen today to think about the forces that may be triggering and re-traumatizing to our Black immigrant neighbors. Things like xenophobia, linguistic or cultural barriers to resources, the threat or the real harm of anti-Black violence, the erasure of culture and heritage through forced assimilation. Ultimately, systemic trauma could be prevented if enough of us take solidarity and action to disrupt systems and support our Black immigrant neighbors. If you're a non-Black and or non-immigrant person in this audience, we ask that you consider taking on disruptive and meaningful conversations and actions. In the comments here later on our Facebook page and in your email inboxes if you registered, we will send you a link to sign up for direct action and further dialogue opportunities in Kansas City, many or most of which will be virtual. Please get involved in our efforts. And now we'll have Nomachat Adiang facilitate our discussion. So I'll let her introduce everyone, and I can't wait to watch and see what you all discuss.
Okay, great. Okay, so we have Decca, Wasim, and Samantha. So Decca is the president of the Somali American Association of Greater Kansas City. She's a scientist for a local pharmaceutical company, a wife, and a mother of 4. Wasim is based in Lenexa, Kansas, where he has been a leader in the founding of multiple companies, all with an African focus. He has devoted his 25 plus years of international business and cross-cultural expertise to create relationships whose long-term positive impact on people in the US and Africa is far-reaching. And Samantha is a mother, sister, daughter, and friend. She was born in Kenya and came to the US in the early 2000s. She attended grade school through high school in the States, is currently studying criminal justice and will be getting a bachelor's in political science, and is currently working giving medical and COVID results to patients. So we will first start with everyone kind of introducing themselves, a little bit about how you came to Kansas City, your experience as an immigrant for a few minutes, and then we'll go into some questions that were compiled based off of people who signed up for the event. So, Decca, if you want to go ahead and kind of speak about your experience coming to the US and everything that we've kind of discussed before.
Great. Hi, everybody. My name is Decca Rabile, and I'm originally from Somalia. I came to the United States in the early 90s, the beginning of the Somali Civil War in 92. I came as a teenager, and I went to school here. I went to university and graduated with master's in chemistry. And I have been living in Kansas City since '94. Before that, I was living in Louisiana. And since then, I have been, really became a citizen and became as American as anybody could be. I have my life, experiences in the United States kind of went through the stages of being a teenager, a college student, a professional, a career person, and now being a mother of teenagers and being a mother of a college student. So I have seen, the whole cycle of American dream, you might say. So that's a nutshell of, maybe the background of who I am. But I'm really looking forward to having a conversation and looking, what kind of questions that the audience may ask.
Okay, Wasim, I guess you can go next and talk about yourself.
Hey guys, I wish you would have had me go first. Trying to follow after what Dak has just said. Now I'm totally confused. But I'm originally from Kenya. I was born and raised there. I came here in the 90s. I made a choice to come to America, and the vision that I had of America when I got here was all from television and movies. It was not the real America that we saw in Africa. I have been here I've lived longer here than I've lived back home. So I have been through the cycle of the American dream. I've seen the good sides and the bad sides and the nightmares. But I do believe that it's made me who I am today. I advocate for the invisible voices. I have become stronger than I ever feel. I cannot turn away from something that's, if somebody's in harm's way or something, I now have the courage to speak. Before I would think like it's not my business, but it is my business. And I love how I learned about what it means to be part of the diaspora. So I'm not alone. I have my brothers and sisters with me. So this is who I am. So thank you.
Okay, Samantha, if you go ahead and speak about yourself.
Hi, everyone. I am Samantha. I'm originally from Kenya. I came here as a young child in the 2000s with, so I could come here for school. As Wasim said, it's definitely a culture shock when you get here because it's not what you think it will be, so to speak. So it really came down to the fact of I've been here and went to elementary school, junior high, high school, and, you know, now that I'm going and taking college classes, you know, I'm a mom, there's just different things that you experience through life as you're trying to make it through. And living here in the United States as an immigrant, that you come here with so much hope, and you come here with a very positive outlook on, you know, what everyone from back home comes and tells you that America is. So when you actually come in, you start to realize, you know, the good and the bad and the ugly. And I wouldn't say necessarily that, depending on the type of person you are. For me, my motto is, you know, you always have to strive to try to do the best that you can do to help somebody else out. So if you go through a situation, you don't just sit back and just, you know, get down. You get up and you learn from it, and then you make sure that the next person doesn't go through it. So just with the different situations that I've experienced as of recently, I know it can change a lot of people's views. It can cause people to, you know, be hard-hearted, but for me, it's more of a drive to kind of try to just make it better, because I know somebody else is going to come from Kenya or from a different country, and I don't want them to just keep experiencing the same thing over and over. So starting from elementary school and how you're treated, because, you know, kids don't know any better and they're taught certain things at home, to whenever you grow up in adulthood and you're, you know, in school and you're in your workplace and how you're treated then, or whenever you come in contact with law enforcement or just anybody in a day-to-day life, there's a lot of stereotypes that go into it.
Okay, I guess, so as we know, the event is called the Black Immigrant Experience. And so how would you, and again, this time I don't have to call out someone's name, it's whoever wants to speak. How would you identify yourself? And someone had asked, like, do you often get lumped together with Black Americans when it comes to asking about ethnicity or race? And if so, how do you feel about that?
All right, I'll be the brave one and go first. Yes, how do I feel? I feel confused sometimes. Number one, I'm a mixture of Indian and African. So a lot of times, by the way, I speak 7 languages, and it's an advantage. And I think my sister from Kenya probably speaks at least 3 languages, if I'm not mistaken. The question is how, yes, there's many times that, can you say that question again? I can't hear you.
Sorry. Yeah, so do you often get lumped together with Black Americans when it comes to asking about ethnicity and race?
Yes. When I first came here, I went to school and stuff, and then I worked for a refugee company. I cannot name the company by name. My job was to resettle the refugees. And what I found out that we were lumped together, but we were called the other Blacks. We were the other Blacks. And I didn't understand what that meant until later down the road, the African Americans did not identify themselves with us. But when it came to doing the census, we were all put into one basket as Blacks. So that's one of the things that I think I found pretty strange, that there was an unspoken animosity between the African Americans and the Africans. That was my personal experience, because I worked with the health system. I worked with DFS, and we would be treated differently because we were the other Blacks, you know. So when I said early on, I'm half African, half Indian, there would be many times that the Somalis would see me and they think I'm a Somali. And I would like to talk to them, but I don't know the language. And they would get really angry at me, and they say, "Oh, so you pretend you don't speak our language?" And I'm like, guys, I'm not from Somalia. I'm not. And same with the Ethiopians, you know. So yes, we do get confused. That's what I said, that I am confused, but I do identify myself as an African black man, a proud African black man. So I think that I can let somebody else jump in here.
Yeah, I would say that for me personally, the way I identify myself, and I think this is true for many Somalis, is that when we always, whenever we had the option of IDing ourselves as Somali American, we like to do that. Simply put, it's because we are in a position to identify our ethnicity. So we, in general, do not like to pass that, by any chance when we get it. However, that's only in paper. However, when you're talking to people already put you in a category, right? So obviously, the first thing they're going to see is the color of your skin. So they will identify you as black first, and then they will identify you as African American. But and that's when the education comes in, and you have to tell people like, yes, I am African American, but I'm Somali American. I'm from Somalia. So it's an ongoing process. And I can tell that from the, when I first came to the States in the early 90s, it was different. But now people are more and more aware of the differences. People are more educated, for whatever reason. People are aware that there are immigrants who come from Africa. And then when you say African American, they are more interested to know, are you, what country you from? I remember when I first came here, when you say you're from Somalia, and the people used to think Africa as a country, you're from Africa. And then so yes. So as far as me personally, I identify, whenever I get a chance, I identify myself as Somali American. And if I don't have that option, obviously it's either Black or African American.
Samantha, did you get a chance to hear what the question was?
No, actually, can you repeat that? I got kicked out.
Okay, it was about how you identify yourself, and do you often get lumped together with Black Americans when it comes to asking about ethnicity and race?
Yeah, so a lot is the answer to that question. I remember one specific situation where it was prom night, my high school prom night, and the limousine driver was like, "You're too pretty to be African American." Didn't know what that meant. And I was just like, "What do you mean by that?" He's like, "The way you talk and the way you look, you must be from somewhere else." And I'm like, "I don't understand what that means." Like, I honestly, I like to identify as Kenyan if I can, but we all know in the forms that they ask you to fill out, there's really no, be specific about what you're from. It's usually either Black or African American. And I always end up checking Black or African American. And there's been some times I check other just because I'm just like so frustrated that I can't check my own, ethnicity. But the stereotypes that go into it, like there's that prom situation, and I ended up telling him that I was from Kenya. And he goes, "Oh, now that makes sense." And I'm just like, I don't get it. Or, whenever you're been in an immigrant situation where I was approached by someone who was at an immigrant event, and he was like, "Are you an immigrant?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she goes, "Huh, I never thought they looked like you." And I'm just like, I think everyone has this stereotypical view that an immigrant has to be a Hispanic, so they don't really associate immigrants with people from Kenya or people from Africa or anything like that. And it's kind of sad because it just shows you what is put out there and what people are taking in when it comes to immigrants. And it's a sort of ignorance when it comes to that. So for me, like Dika said, if I get a chance, I'll tell people, no, I'm Kenyan. And I do consider myself African American in the sense that I am from Africa and I came to America, and I consider both of them home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat. I identify myself as Black as well. And then any chance I get, I tell people where I'm from, especially because I cannot escape it with my name. So people are going to ask me. But I think, me, you, Samantha, with us not having any kind of accent, sometimes there's always already an assumption that you are Black American. And I have, like Wasim said, I have been in this country longer than I have been in my home country, but at the same time, like your home life, you know, that culture is never going to escape, even though we're in the United States. So it's not an either or situation. It's just that we have different spaces that we're in, and that's where those identities kind of come to play. Let's see. So that actually goes into one of the questions that were asked. It says, have you experienced racism, and what has been the most difficult thing about adjusting to life in the US or in Kansas City?
I'll go ahead. The first part of your question is, have you ever experienced racism? The irony is, me personally, I haven't had a direct, experience of racism, somebody point blank telling me things. And, however, there's always kind of like indirect prejudice that comes with who you are. And that prejudice actually comes to me in different facets. First, I'm a Muslim, so it's obvious. A lot of people have their own bias. Then I'm Black, I'm immigrant. So sometimes it comes as a package, right? People are biased toward you. But what I found very, very kind of like puzzling to me is my kids who are born and raised in this country, right, have more experiences of racism than me. I mean, when I say racism, where people come and tell them on their face, either tell them to go back to where you came from or call them names, right? And those are, now they are teenagers. They always had a problem understanding when people tell them go back to where you came from. I mean, I have a child, my son, one time he came to me and he goes like, wasn't I born in Olathe? And I'm like, yeah. And he said, so where am I supposed to go back? Right? So, that's the reality, in this great country. And that is the reality that many of us, especially immigrants, we just find a way to deal with it. And whenever, me personally, whenever I get a chance, it's educating and about my culture, my religion, your ethnic background, your country. When I first came to this country, Somalia was going through many, many, many phases of problems. First, it was a civil war, then it was a drought, and then fast forward, it was the whole situation with the pirates in the Indian Ocean, and then it was the other situations. So you cannot detach yourself from what's happening in the political arena, what's happening in the politics, and what's happening in the national security, whatever is happening, and it's coming through the media. You're gonna experience that. So I came to the point where now I just have to find a way to deal with it and with people. So I'm sad to say that, but that's the reality of where we are now at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, have I witnessed racism? That's a whole book. Yes. When I came, I think the word naive is an understatement. I wanted to be a fireman for some reason. I found that job was like an interesting job. And this is the first city I came to, Kansas City. I'm not, again, by design, I would not like to name what fire department I went to apply for my job. And it's like a horror movie. I walked in, the room was very noisy. As soon as I walked in, it was dead silence. Like you could hear the crickets. So I didn't know what was going on. So I went ahead and I applied. I filled my application and everything. I was the only Black person in that room. And that kind of made it very obvious to me that maybe I was not in the wrong fire department. So I have experience. So I did not fit the criteria. I passed everything, the physical, the written test, everything, but I did not pass the criteria of a fireman. Racism, again, driving while black, happened to me so many times that it became to a point where I started to know the names of the officers that would pull me over. Being black, being Muslim, I have a double whammy for myself. My job is to fly international. I fly a lot, so you can only imagine when I go through airport security. It scares me to go through that. I'll give you guys an experience. I was coming back from Kenya, and I missed my flights because of security checkups. So they had to reroute me through Vancouver, Canada. And when I got to the immigration office coming into America, the sad thing was the immigration officer was a black woman. And the way she interviewed me, and she had some really personal questions about why was I gone so long. You know, that's none of your business. I'm a U.S. citizen. I can go for as long as I want, wherever I want to go. And she continued and continued and continued. And then she finally asked me, what do you do for a living? And I'm a certified diversity trainer. So I got an opportunity to say, my job is to teach people like you to be nice to people like me. And boy, you should have seen her look on her face. She said, welcome back. And I went back my way. So yeah, I have seen it in many ways, you know. So I think we have lost Samantha.
Yeah, I think her connection, hopefully we get her back on. But I think what's important to acknowledge too, because I think when the person probably asked the question, they're talking about layman's terms of racism, which is a lot of like prejudice, as you guys mentioned. But it's important to note that, you know, when we, because I came as a refugee as well, and so when it comes to resettlement, they put you in certain neighborhoods. So you're automatically going to experience the same thing as, you know, certain Black neighborhoods in Kansas City or in other areas that experience structural racism anyway. And so I think that's important to note, because even if we don't acknowledge that, let's say we all were on this panel saying, oh yeah, no, I didn't experience it, that that's not the case, because there's a lot of things that we don't have control over. And if someone is nice to us throughout our life, like there are things that structurally that we can't get away from. And so I was wanting to make sure that we acknowledge that it's a combination of prejudice, but also a lot of things that, you know, it's a combination of policies and the history of slavery and all things and redlining, things like that are also part of what we inherit when we come to the United States as well. Samantha, how is your connection? Oh goodness. I think she's frozen. Let's see.
Just to add on to what, like I said, my job was to resettle the refugees. Is Samantha back? Okay, sorry. And again, my job was a very difficult job. I had a job where I had to get a family ready in 6 months to face the reality of America. And I normally would get, my families were from South Sudan, Somalia, Ethiopia, and Bosnia, Vietnam. And most of the time when I would get a family from Africa, where we would resettle them, and when I would get a family from like Europe, like Bosnia, where we would resettle them, was two different worlds. The Black families normally would get really bad housing. When the Europeans came, Bosnians who are, they would get fully furnished apartments. And it came to a point where I didn't catch it in the beginning, But you're right, you know, putting you in schools where, again, coming as a refugee, you normally don't have documentations. They look at your size and they just give you like a birth date, and they just you look like you're 12, and they're going to put you in a classroom with kids of 12, not realizing that this kid has been through a horrific time in his life, and then they find that the kid is not socializing with the other kids, and that's where the stigma. And you know, kids are mean. Kids can be very mean to each other, and so I saw a lot of that, and that was to the point early on when you talked about getting settled where you are. So I was just trying to make up for Samantha not being there. So
yeah, but I'm glad that, like, you know, you can kind of talk about how that plays out in even agencies and things like that. Let's see what we have. So it says, as you were adjusting to live in the United States, what interactions or conversations were beneficial to you feeling welcome in your new community?
In general, I wanted to kind of like talk a little bit about the state of mind of refugee. When somebody's refugee and they come here, you know, and since, you know, you guys alluded earlier to the trauma, many, and I can speak from the Somali experience, many Somali refugees who come here, let's say in Kansas City, they spent almost for the last 30 years in refugee camps in Kenya and in other places, but predominantly in Kenya. So you can imagine somebody who have never had a life outside a refugee camp. Many of these youth or young children who come are born in refugee camps, right? And many of the adults have horror stories to share, right? Many of the adults experience trauma in, you know, either family members getting killed or they themselves getting tortured and having really struggled to end up in refugee camps in Kenya. So having that background of the experience of this person coming from this refugee camp and coming to here to the United States, and many, like Wasim said, many of these people, majority of these refugees, when they come, they are put in the least favorite neighborhoods with the worst school districts in town. So you have children and adults who are coming with trauma. And then you put them in these areas where they are double traumatized for whatever reason, right? And it could be partly is because they don't speak the language. It could be because of the cultural differences. And many times for the Somali people is the religion difference, the difference in, you know, the belief system, which is completely different. And imagine you already traumatized. You are not coming, you know, happy anyways. You are already traumatized and you're coming and you are getting the double traumatization because you are in a no man's land, and you are the best that any resettlement agency can do for you is give you a housing, give you food, and show you where the school your kids are going to, and as help you to get a job, and that's the end of it. And after a few months, you're on your own. So the thing that usually helps, and this is something that helps, is number one, if you get the right support. What I mean by the right support, I don't necessarily mean getting the housing and the you know, the food. I mean the coupling, that hosting that introduces you to the culture, that hosting that teaches you this is how we do things, right? From the simply driving a car, right? You know, people learn how to drive and they get the driver license, right? But many times we forget, if you're coming from a refugee camp, there is no rules, there are no laws. It's basically everybody's on their own. That's why me now being the president of the Somali community, one of the things we focus is rehabilitation process. educating people how to how to understand there is a law and order, building trust with the law enforcement, because that's something where they come from. There's no trust for law enforcement, right? So building trust with the law enforcement, building trust with the criminal justice system, building trust in the education system. All of these things are important. So one thing that helps in general for the refugees is to have that support system, that training, right? That continuous training. It's not 1 month. Sometimes it takes years, 1 year, 2 years, until the person can understand how the system in this country works. And for those of us who are involved in the community and the activists and advocating for the community, I can tell you many of the problems that the refugees have come from lack of understanding of how the system works. One is you explain to them how the system works, and you walk them through. It's one thing to be theoretical and talk about, but it's another thing to walk the person through. For example, we had the election just recently. We had to tell people how to register, take them, show them, and all of that. It takes time and effort and resources. Then that helps them to become a really productive member of the society. If we fail to do that, which we many times we fail, then the effect will be having segment of the population that came from trauma and still living in that trauma, right? So to answer back to your question, is one thing that helps is to have the support system, to be able to adjust to a new environment. Anybody can tell you to have the support system, right? And once you have that, then you can see the product, to be where you want it to be.
Yeah, thank you so much, Deka. I think what you brought up is very important. I also came to this country as a refugee, and as you know, there's a lot of refugees from South Sudan in the Northeast area. That's where we started, and it was a similar experience where while we didn't have to deal with the religious aspect, there's just a lot of things with culture, even something as not even understanding gender roles. Growing up here, it was hard to have to, I have expectations going to school. There are expectations that I have. And then having so many barriers, because going home, I had to do this, I had to do that, I had to do that. And having to repeatedly get my family to understand why certain things are important that wouldn't have been important in our household was very hard. Like right now, I am a college graduate, but it was not an easy process. And those things are not, it's not going to be something that's typical or common because of what you're talking about. Those the intentional relationships and the intentional support that would have to go into every family that comes here is something that we don't have the resources for that.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on what my sister said, I don't think a lot of Americans understand that what the process is to get a visa or to get out of the Kenya. One of the list, and they are families that have never even left the camp. Generations of them that have just lived there, they have died there, and it's difficult. And having coming from a place where survival for the fittest. You see, that's a subject that is very dear to my heart, because the refugee camps are very violent. There's so much that goes on there because everybody has already experienced trauma, and then you put everybody together. So we don't think as a collective. We don't think as like, okay, what can we do to make our lives better? Right then, I have horror stories when the food distribution is done. You see kids running there to fight to get the food, thinking that I should just get a bag of rice so I can take it back to my tent. And they're living in tents. So, and they never get to leave the settlement the way they are brought in. So this is a very good point you brought. My easiest families to resettle Sudanese because they had a very strong system here because they had been here for a while. The Somalis who are great. At the same time, the Somali community is very welcoming to all the new Somalis that came. And I see my sister Samantha is back here, so I really would like to hear from her. You're on mute.
My goodness. Okay, thank you. So Samantha, we were talking about having to adjust to living in the United States, and what kind of support systems and what kind of support was needed. So maybe you could talk about your experience and what the kind of support that you needed to kind of like adjust to live in Kansas City.
So the things that I needed to living in Kansas City was more so a good familial support system, because when I went to school, no one spoke Swahili. Seeing people who kind of look the same as me, I found like maybe 2 people. So the best thing that kind of kept me at bay is like just those good like family support systems that you'd have. The older that I got though, like right now, I'm able to find organizations that are out here that help assist immigrants, and just different resources that you'd be able to find as an immigrant. Let's say, because it's very taboo to speak about like being an immigrant. Like you're taught as a Kenyan, basically, just don't speak about your immigration status or anything to do with it or anything. So whenever you find these organizations right now that give you the trust to be able to speak about what's going on, how to go and navigate through things. To be honest, before I got on DACA, I was scared. I didn't know how to go about everything. I didn't know like what to do. I found out fairly young. I found out in high school. I wasn't sure about it, and it was very taboo to talk about it. So I had to wait until I was 18, learn that it is okay to share with people that you need help. You just have to also be wise about it, if that makes sense. But there is organizations that will help and support you through that and help you figure out the immigration part of it, being an immigrant, and help you feel comfortable in your own skin. Because unfortunately, being here so long, the stereotypes and everything, and the things that are said to you growing up, they kind of try to bring you down as an immigrant. They try like you have to look, speak, act a certain way, or you won't be accepted. And that's not the case, because you're fine just the way you are. So that's one thing that definitely helped me, knowing that there's people around that love us for who we are, and we don't have to pretend to be someone else.
Okay, thank you, Samantha. Did anyone have anything to add to that before I continue? Okay. Okay, so some people have asked questions related to social justice. So one of them was about if people have seen any changes since March, especially with, as you saw, a lot of uprising and protests going on. And how do you navigate or get involved in social uprisings and racial justice movements for Black lives nationally or locally? When have you felt connected, and when have you not felt connected?
One thing that is very important is that, especially if you are immigrant who became a citizen, naturalized citizen, there is no way that I can detach myself from the reality of the country that I chose to be a citizen of, right? One thing that most people don't know is that becoming a citizen, nobody forces you to be a citizen, right? You are a legal immigrant, right? And you put the effort to become a citizen of this country, right? So, and one of the things that we do in our organization, and I personally advocate for, is as an immigrant, there are a couple of things we have to understand when it comes to social justice, especially when it comes to the whole Black Lives Matter movement and all of that. Is we have to educate ourselves and our people, the immigrants, the history of civil rights movement in this country. This is very important. One is we educate ourselves about the history and the struggle of people who came before us. And actually, we are the product of the struggle of people who came before us, right? This whole immigration laws in the United States really became, open. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't in the 1960s civil rights movement. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be sitting and becoming an immigrant in this country. So that's one thing that we, focus a lot with the new immigrants, and to be part of the, the justice, the society that we live in, whether it's advocating for justice for all or getting involved in organizations that advocate for civil rights and so forth. So I don't see any separation. That's what I'm trying to say, between being an immigrant and being involved in these issues that are pressing in this country. They go hand by hand, right? So just because I'm a Black immigrant doesn't make me go sit back and watch from the distance. Even if I want to do that, the society we're living will not allow you to do that. So you have to be part of it.
Okay, that's a very good point. So when I came here as an immigrant and I got my green card, for the longest time, I did not want to be a US citizen because I really wanted to identify myself with a Kenyan, that I'm a Kenyan, because once if I became a US citizen, I would lose my Kenyan nationality. And the reason I became a citizen because the most important thing that I realized that I could not do as a resident was I could not vote. And I had no voice. And that was like there was a fire burning inside me. I could make all the noises I wanted to do, but I don't have power to go vote. And another thing that I realized that if I did something, maybe something technically, and it was by law, it was not right, they had all the rights to ship me back to Africa without a fair trial or anything. So I learned the power of voting. The question was, has anything changed? A lot has changed. I think for the worse, not for the better. A lot has changed for the worse. It's given people rights to call us names out loud now. Just for example, you wearing a mask, that's become so political. If you wear a mask, you're labeled. And we have COVID-19 here. People are dying left and right. People are getting sick. So has anything changed? No. Things changing? Yes. Will the new administration come in? Will everything be back to Wonderland? No. We have a lot of work to do because there's so much damage done to the human soul that we have to find a common ground. My favorite thing is like when I have conversations with people, I speak with my hands a lot. I mean, right now you guys can't see, but my hands are moving a lot. And I can read people's, in fact, let me do this here. I can read people's bodies. And when somebody does this, they have already decided that you are talking nonsense. So my job was to train people on how to have a discussion, not an argument. So once you learn the difference between a discussion and argument, then we can only come to a solution where you're not wrong, you're not right, you have an opinion, I have an opinion, I'm not forcing my opinion on you, generalizing all Muslims into one basket. September 11th changed my life completely. I'm not from Iraq. I've never even been to, but I'm a Mohammed. All of a sudden, everything happened. So Black Lives Matter, yes, it has exposed I believe, the real America. This has been happening for decades or centuries. I come from a very young country. We are 55 years old, Kenya. America is what, 200 and something. So we have a lot to learn. So when we come here, this is the land of opportunity. It's the melting pot. This is where dreams come true. I mean, look what just happened. I don't want to go into elections, but we have a first vice president, black female. I mean, I can scream right now all I want. But are things getting better? I believe they will. But we have so much dialogue left. Samantha might.
Mm-hmm. I think, Samantha, before you speak, I think it's important.
You're right. See.
The work that you do with the DDLN, and that to me is also a form of social justice. That, like, I think because we talk about it, and Black Lives Matter being the root of talking about police brutality, I think if we want to talk about the term social justice, it has to do with addressing issues for different people. And I think as Black people, there are things that ties together in terms of negative experiences we have, like interactions with police or police brutality. But being an immigrant, there's social justice issues and policing in that aspect that is not talked about, and that also impacts immigrants, but also Black immigrants. Like I knew people in the South Sudanese community that were deported. I knew people that were killed by police, and I think it's important that we talk about that intersection in your experience and the work you've been doing with DDLN. But I'm sorry. Anyway, just go ahead and speak on that.
Just to add to that, policing, I think, is a problem worldwide. It's not a problem in America. Okay.
Yes.
When we look at Africa, we have tribalism. Okay, we can look at Rwanda, Burundi, what happened there. So we have racism here. We have tribalism in Africa. So the color of your skin, you're darker than I am. I'm lighter than you are. I'm a higher caste. But the policing system, I believe, exists around the world. Here, what I believe has changed is everybody has a phone now. Instantly, everybody pulls out a phone, and before we didn't have that opportunity. And in Africa, what I like about America and what I really dislike about Africa a little bit, and again generalizing it, is here you are innocent until proven guilty. In Africa, you're guilty until proven innocent. So it's the other way around, But Samantha, we keep on losing you, so I want to hear you.
All right, yeah, you're completely right. There's just certain things. For me, the equivalent in Kenya, I remember speaking to my grandma and hearing that with the election, it came a riot right after, and I just couldn't believe it. And, she was saying how, she couldn't even walk down the street to buy milk because the president who won, that tribe was fighting the president who didn't win. And it was like a tribal war. And it blew my mind. I remember that. I was just like, oh my gosh, like, but now look where we are at. And it's not even tribal wars, but it's still a war in a sense against, opposing sides. And if you want to look at the history of America and how we happening now, there's a lot. And okay, racism is gone, forget about it. The thing is, it's there. It's because it's like trying to basically cut a tree without cutting the root, thinking that it's just going to go away. You have to completely take out the root to get to the problem and completely eliminate it, or else it's just going to be there. It might not be as big anymore, but it's still there. Give it a chance to grow, get bigger. So it's just one of those situations where I just recently experienced possibly like the worst racism I could have possibly experienced. It wasn't even in a direct way. It wasn't somebody calling me the N-word. It wasn't somebody, you know, I've had monkey noises made at me, the whole clicking sounds. Do you understand this since you're from Africa? Like, umpteenth of them. That is more so like I chalk that up for ignorance, but things that involve children. So for me, the situation that I'm going through right now that has made it into the media is a mistake that I made as a mom. But the thing is, I made a mistake, okay? And I owned up for that mistake. Literally would change that mistake if I could. But it was held at a standard where, because of how somebody else feels about me and where I'm from, that led into me having an interaction with ICE. I've never had an interaction with ICE. I told you guys I found out when I was in high school that, you know, my DACA situation, I didn't work legally. I didn't do anything legally. I was scared. I was like, okay, what do I do? It so happened when I turned 18, Obama got elected, and there goes the DREAM Act. Solution to my would fix everything. Not knowing with every election, things change. And unfortunately, things changed for the worse. And, you know, you end up being in a situation where you watch the news about it, you hear about it. And we all have done this at one point in time. You won't even think it could be you, that person's shoes. You're just you're sitting there awestruck. The situation I'm dealing with right now didn't happen instantaneously. It was one of those things where it slowly progressed. And then when things started not making sense, when you're looking at paperwork and documents, court documents that don't make any sense, and you're supposed to trust the justice system, they make it sound so simple, so easy. Do this and this and this, and you'll get your daughter back, basically, is how it went in my situation. And you start doing those things, but then as you're doing those things, they then have one person in particular say, no, this isn't going anywhere. I'm going to talk to, you know, my lawyer about termination of parental rights. How? There's a whole team of people, right? There's a whole team of people at these meetings. Only one person, which you guys know how it is whenever, like he said, body language. You can read someone's body language when they feel some way about you. That's what you call indirect racism, when they don't have to say anything, because we've dealt with a lot of people feeling comfortable enough to speak on it and to act on it. And it was one of those situations where that's not the first thing I wanted to think about. Somebody brought it to my attention, my old caseworker, and said, hey, I just want to let you know what's going on here. And I was like, no, there's no way. Like, especially when there's a child involved, like, how are you going to just take the child's best interest and not give them back to a family that loves them because of how you feel with somebody else's skin color? On top of that, deny you had anything to do with this person getting put in ICE custody. Yet there's an email at the bottom where you generalize and you say, when we went to see Miss Mungai at the detention center in Caldwell County, she mentioned that she was brought here by family. I would like to know why, who brought her here and why she didn't come here with her mom. But yet when you're asked the question of, was it you who called ICE? No. This is somebody who's up in our justice system. This is somebody who is an officer of the justice system. To me, it's just, you're dealing with kids. Like, there's certain things that just don't make sense, and you watch them, but then when they happen to you, you kind of get awestruck and you're at a standstill of what do I do? And that's when I fall back on prayer. I fall back on, you know, the wonderful people who ended up having to help me out of that immigration situation. Which, so this day, they're still by my side. They don't have to be there. You know, you hear a lot about people, you know, they'll help you once and then they'll forget about you. No, they're still here to this day. That's what keeps me going, as long as my promise of letting my daughter know, the same way I promised her during the custody battle with her dad is the same way I promised her now, I will always fight for you. They didn't take that seriously. They put that in court documents as, we don't think Ms. Mungai takes her actions seriously because I said I will do whatever it takes to fight for my daughter. For me, it's make it make sense. How do you sit there and you really deep. I asked, how do you sleep at night? You have children. How do you sleep at night? You go home, you put kids away. Unfortunately, now that I'm hearing, I'm not the first person. They didn't have, they were scared. Like, who goes up against a whole entire court system and county? It just doesn't make any sense. So that's why I believe in standing up, and motto will always stand. Bad guys are not afraid of consequences, of anything. Go out in the masses. So why should the people who want to do good be afraid of retaliation, be afraid of what somebody else is going to do to them? Because the opposing side is not. We've seen it in this entire, previous election and the previous administration. Number one reason people felt comfortable to speak out is because the number one leader felt enough comfortable to speak out and spew hate and spew division. So if he's going to have that much influence, that majority, what's to say somebody else can't have as much for good? It just comes down to fear. You can't be fearful of speaking out. You can't be fearful of supporting the next person. Immigrants. With Black people as well, the cops know and people know that Black people are afraid, live in fear, and that's how it holds you. With immigrants, with Muslims, with everyone into a room, because everyone's going to look at you because you're different. Why being different and being somewhere else have to make you feel that uncomfortable? Why can't you hone it in? Driving your motivation to create a better situation gets resolved and you move on. Doesn't mean somebody else isn't.
Thank you so much, Samantha, for speaking on that. I can't imagine having to, because me and you have talked about this, that, you had become a DACA recipient. And I think what is also important to note is that one of the barriers that even got you caught was because of the fact that it costs so much to renew things. And so they reap a lot of benefits, because things like renewing DACA is like almost $1,000. Becoming a citizen costs about the same as well. So the system is structured in a way that there are people coming here as refugees, and you have to raise the money to become a citizen and go through, even when people say go through the right process, those things cost money. And we already know in the United States, we don't even have a system that pays most Americans a living wage, let alone immigrants, or especially, and I won't generalize, but at least in my community, my mother came to this country, did not have any kind of formal education, and had to figure out how to get work. And as many people will know, they'll have things like you have to have a high school diploma to get most jobs. So barriers like that people don't even think about, that, it's not as easy as people make it seem to get access to the same types of resources. But yeah, thank you so much for speaking about your experience. And I think Wasim brought up a good point that how I see it is that the experiences that we have in America and experiences Black Americans is two sides of the same coin. We're Black, and what connects us is unfortunately the struggle that we have to go through. And one of the reasons that we even have the same policing issues in other countries is those are colonized countries, or formerly colonized. And I won't say that we can say that they're independent, but we know that there's a lot of Western countries still reaping the benefits of these civil wars and things like that. And I think that's important for people to know, so they understand it's not like the same powers that be, they are benefiting from both overseas and Black experiences in the United States. And I think we think about it too separately. And so when people ask a lot of questions about Black American experience, Black immigrant experience, it's almost like a catch-22, because it's an important subject to talk about, but it almost creates division, because it almost seems like they're so separate, but if anything, it's more of an overlapping experience. Let's see what else. How can there be more conversation and spaces for Black immigrants in Kansas City?
I'm glad you asked that question. First of all, what we're doing tonight is a good start. This is a conversation that needs to be really applauded, and it's a good starter, right? First of all, acknowledging that they exist within the Kansas City area is very important. True that you know, many of the immigrants, and I'll speak on behalf of the Somalis again, many of the immigrants, they have a bigger you know, bigger issues to worry about than getting involved in the community and coming and having a panel discussions and getting the organizations, because we have been talking about the challenges that the African immigrants face when they come here. And specifically those, I'm going to go back to those who are brought here as refugees, you know, those who are brought here by the federal government, the United States. They have a bigger issues, right? And we discussed some of them tonight, but you know, yes, it's their responsibility to reach out to their neighbors. It's their responsibility to reach out to the community and educate them. Yes, I'm not going to exempt them from that. However, it's also the responsibility of the greater community to reach out to them, to meet them where they are, to go to their neighborhoods, to go to their schools that they go to get involved, to engage with them, to figure out what their challenges are, what are their successes, highlight the successes of the immigrants, right? Let's not only highlight when something bad happens and then we just say, oops, yeah, those were immigrants. They came here as refugees, so there's something wrong with that system. Therefore, we need to shut down that service. No more immigration, no more refugees, because you see, they are bad people. It's time that we go beyond that superficial outlook of things and we go deeper than that. It's time that suburbia, inner city, business, education system, higher education, they get involved and we put the effort of getting to know who our neighbors are. It's only then we can have, you know, mutual understanding. But if you don't know me and I don't know you, then you're going to be the boogeyman and I'll be the boogie woman. Simple as that. You know, things are not going to change. And I have seen it. I mean, I have seen people that when they talk to me, they go like, no, no, you're not refugee. Yeah, I am. Yes, I got educated in this country. Yes, I went through the system, and there are more like me. How much effort and time are you willing to put to find out people like me in this community? And that's where the issue is, where we let media and social media give us information because we don't want to put the effort to finding the true color of people.
Yeah.
So, you know, what should we do? Tonight's a good start, but let's stop here.
Yeah.
Amazing. I mean, thank you for saying that. This is a wonderful start. And stigma, I've lived and so I've moved twice. So I've lived in a place in Overland Park where I knew my waving neighbors. I did not know their names, but I knew this one lived on that house. The one that waved like this lived on. We never took time to actually know each other, you know. And right now, just to go back a little bit, Samantha. I mean, just hearing your story and seeing you cheer up. You're not alone. That was a Swahili thing to my sister here. We have, like you said, this is a beautiful start. And what I like about this is the younger people that are taking the initiative of making change. The changes that are happening right now, if we want to go back, Black Lives Matter, I've been studying it, and little do the decision makers know that the people that are protesting in the streets are their kids. That's the beautiful change that I'm seeing with Black Lives Matter. all walks of life out there. And the people on the top, little do they know, their children are the ones in the streets. So I believe this is a great start. What my sister just said, we have to be, nobody can be exempt of what's going on. There's no excuses, but there are cultural things that paralyze us. For example, just a short one, census. The Somali community, I am really proud of you guys, because when it comes to elections, that's the only time I see the electives coming to your neighborhoods, because they know how active you are. And as soon as the elections are over, they want your votes. They want your votes, But take some time and understand the Somali culture. Understand Islam, because I worked with the census, and there were times that the guys would go and they said, what's wrong with these guys? They never answer the doors. Little do they know, a female cannot answer the door to a male that she does not know, or if family member. So we had to have a dialogue with the census takers. How about you send females to a woman's house? How about you go after a certain time when the husband is home or the brother is home? So it's a learning tool. And again, this is a very good platform, and I commend you guys for doing this. We have a lot of work. So hey, Samantha, again, back to you, girl.
So yeah, you guys are completely right. It's all about starting a conversation. A conversation can lead to many things. When you and they realize, come down once you start having conversations with people and they start to get to know you. So I feel like, yes, what we're doing today helps. It also takes the masses, making sure that everybody out there is getting out in their community. And I mean, right now with COVID, but still getting out in their community and making sure that they're finding different ways to just make everyone that's involved comfortable and not be so fearful. It always, always, always comes back to fear. Fear breeds anger. Fear breeds hostility and division. And a lot of people don't always person so angry. What are they scared of is always the question you should ask. So it's one of those things where reaching out to your resources, reaching out to people. You see somebody walking on the street, give them a smile. Don't clutch your purse. Give them a smile. Don't think about 9/11 and that's the person who did it, because it's not. It's one of those things where you have to have an open mind and an open heart going into this, because the only way for things to change and to get better is with us having open hearts and open minds, but also being strong enough to stand up for ourselves and what we believe. So I feel like that will definitely change a lot of things, and we have to be consistent. It happens and it's all great and the vibe and everything's busy, and then everyone forgets about it in a couple of months. That can't happen, because then that's how change doesn't happen, is because you just move on to the next best thing, and that's not it at all.
Mm-hmm.
Just to add to that, co-ops are really good. That's where my strength comes with my company. Is we've had this beautiful conversation. What's next? What happens with this conversation? I go to a lot of panel discussions, and they're amazing. But then that's it. You had your 1 hour, whatever it was. You see the same familiar faces. We need to break that norm, and I think you guys are on the right path.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add to that is, which is related to what you guys have spoke on, is there are a lot of assumptions made about what it means to be an immigrant, what it means to be a refugee, even what our struggles are. Sometimes, especially growing up in the ways that schools may even try to support, is in ways that may not have been actually that helpful, or being hyper vigilant about certain things but not others. I think a good example growing up in the school system was and it's still, I noticed it was still happening because I have family that's still going through this, that are like 11 years old, was being put into ESL, ELL programs, assuming that the children don't know any English, assuming my mom doesn't know any English. And while I am from, my family is mostly from South Sudan, my mom is half Liberian, was born in Liberia, first language was English, but nobody ever asked. They just assume that the person doesn't know. Or even sometimes going straight to talking, which I understand why, but going straight to talk to the child as opposed to the parent. Like, you need to ask beforehand, does this person, like, do you know English? Because I understand trying to assist, but when you make assumptions, that's also that's going to be offensive, but it also could have a large impact on a lot of people's lives. But yeah, I think there's so much that goes into the image of what an immigrant looks like, sounds like. I go through that a lot. That the preconceived notions already impacts how the person's going to treat you, instead of them really trying to get to know you, like Decca was saying in the first place.
I also want to add one thing, and this is something I have seen across the board, right? When we have an immigrant community, and specifically I'm going to focus on the refugees, people who are immigrant and they come here as refugees. Many times I have worked with so many people, different organizations, and they have the best intention. I have no question about that. But the problem is they offer pity, right? When this person doesn't need that, what they need from you is empowerment, right? And the system itself, the way it's designed, I question, it's not designed to empower individuals. It's designed to put people in cycles that already exist, right? Hence the neighborhoods, hence the education system they're getting. It's like you belong to this system. Therefore, you need to take your ticket in this line, and this is the line you're going to continue. And we see the cycle. I mean, how does it make sense? Somebody who's born and raised in this country, went to school here, they go to community college, and they are put in an ESL program. How do you explain that? It happens. It happens. And all you have to do is just look in our community, what's happening. Why? Because, like you said, we don't question, we don't ask. You see, many places, all they have a fund, they need to spend. It's simple. I have the fund for this, I need to spend. So just find me the people to spend on. Even if that's not the appropriate allocation of the funds. What about diversifying? What about diverting that fund to something different? And this is what because part of the advocacy I do for the Somali community is youth mentorship. There are bright youth. There are people who are gifted. Although they come from a trauma, but they are gifted. And you can see, given the opportunity, they can go places. And I'm always finding that we're fighting for these kids. Why are you labeling them? Oh, they have a difficulty in understanding the language. Or they come from a household where their families are illiterate. Yes, guess what? My father was a highly educated man, but his mother was an illiterate woman. What is the connection? There is no connection. So you're right. We make assumptions and we want people to fit in these boxes that are already prepackaged. And it's not going to work like that. It won't work like that. Sooner or later, this is what we see the failure. This is why we see many immigrant families, many immigrant community are not really getting up with the process and where they should be by now, because of the approach we are taking. So I think this part of these conversations we're having is time to kind of like think the strategy and think twice about the resources, the allocation. And I'm talking to anybody who's listening, who's part of the organization. Think about your resources, how you're allocating, where they're going, and all of those. Just these are things that we have to really force ourselves to think about. Sorry, I didn't.
No. I want to jump onto that because you've just hit exactly the point that a lot of people miss. Okay, you came into this country as a refugee, but you're no longer a refugee. but we still label them as refugees. So we got to get those boxes cleaned out. 30 years later, you still introduce somebody as a refugee. You've taken the empowerment away from them. You will become a second-class citizen. So that's what, and I'm really happy you're saying that, because there are some organizations that I work with them and I try to educate them, because let's not introduce this person as a refugee. Yes, they are not ashamed of being refugees, but give them the right, introduce them with their name first. And if they feel that they want to say that I'm a refugee, I was a refugee, let it be so. We talked about my mom speaks same languages like I do, and she went through chemo and radiation, and when we go to the hospitals, they automatically think like, do you need somebody to come and translate for you? And then they ask questions like, does she speak English? And she normally tell them, no, I don't speak it. And there'll be times when I leave her alone and they're talking about my mom. And literally assuming, and like you just said, we come from countries that were colonized by the Europeans. So our national language might be Swahili, but the official language is English. So we do speak, but I do want to commend my sister, because we have been prepackaged in boxes, and that cycle has to break. The funds that are being allocated for different programs, they have to be distributed in a right manner.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thank you. I spoke on this because Alive and Well does convenings, and someone asked a question, and I remember saying that about the youth and immigrants, in that when we talk about the experiences that we've gone through, people just say, oh, I'm sorry you went through that. Not, oh, you know what? You might be like the best person to do this, or you might have a certain skill. So it's not even like taking someone's life experience and being able to utilize it. Is like, oh, I heard your story, I'm gonna leave it there, I'm sorry you went through it, and then just leave. It's almost like they're not seeing what we can contribute to society, and that is that we have no value past our struggle, our stories. I've noticed too that my name sometimes becomes a conversation starter, and people will ask me where I'm from, and sometimes it got to a point where, especially when I was living in Springfield, that I would just say I was from Kansas City. And the reason being, I just got tired of people going straight to, oh, war all the time, asking me when did I come here. But it didn't go past that. It was just about that experience. And, it just starts to get frustrating, and that's where it goes to all the time. It's about you being a refugee. And, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but in your communities, but at least in the South Sudanese community, we share a lot of articles among us when someone does something great, across the diaspora, like it could be in the United States, Canada. But in the articles, they always say something about someone being a refugee as being part of the story. And I've always had an issue with it, because these, a lot of the people that are in these articles are people who've become, basketball players and elected officials, which is not an easy feat as an average person anyway. But it kind of feels like it's supposed to be this model minority thing, and I feel like it kind of absolves people from talking about their role in being complicit in what even caused us to be refugees in the first place. Because we are not the ones that made ourselves refugees. These are conflicts that happen because of people that are not even a part of our country, drew out maps that wasn't part of our decisions, and then we inherit those kinds of issues, and then somehow we are labeled this way when we didn't start. We're not the ones that decided to become refugees, or you know what I mean. So yeah.
Just to add to that, in general, African immigrants are the most educated group in the U.S. You know, I love when somebody says he took my job. Okay, little did they know that the person that took the job is a freaking neurosurgeon. So when you go to the hospitals and you look at the medical team, it's mostly immigrants, migrants, refugees. The healthcare system. If today we decided as the immigrants that let's take a day off, the health system in the United States would crash. All those jobs, we do them, and those jobs come with high knowledge education. You know, so.
Does anyone else have anything to add? We're actually getting pretty close on time.
So I know we were speaking about funding. When it comes to funding and where funding is allocated, especially in our communities, it's one of those things that, okay, we'll think about it when it actually comes time to when we're looking to do more things, but no one ever thinks about the funding that's just sitting there. And, like Becca mentioned, they then start throwing money just random places, and that's not intentional. It's not going to help anything. And so I feel like when we start looking at funding and where it's put, it's just one of those things. And I want everyone to just ask themselves a question about how much funding have you heard has been put into any refugee or any immigrant places that is brought up in the political system? You hear about educational funding, funding, you hear about fixing the roads, you hear about fixing buildings, putting funding here. When have you ever heard about funding going towards a base type of, just like I said, empowerment, something to do with empowering immigrants or something to help immigrants be good? Last time we heard anything positive when it came to do with immigrants was when the whole entire DACA situation happened, or refugees filling up. So it's just one of those things you should constantly question as a citizen. Why is it that we're not hearing about immigrants, but yet, as was stated, that's the biggest community you see when you go to hospitals, or you see whenever you go into laboratories. It's just one of those things where that statement was made, let's go ahead and block off the borders, or people got stuck coming back into the country who were US citizens. They were first an immigrant. And it was just one of those situations. Do you realize you're blocking one of our scientists that we need help from, and you're blocking them because why? It's just one of those situations where when it comes down to like funding, we should put funding definitely in places where it needs to be in the immigrant society, so it can empower us to rise up and not just feel like we're less than because important things when it comes politically to where money should be allocated, just as important as anybody else. Same thing with, you hear about, them going, number one political statement will help the Black communities. But you go into the Black communities, it's like fix up a house or two and call it good. I did something. That's not enough. Like, again, you're not getting to the root of the problem. You're not putting the funding where it should be, because you're not looking into the homes. You're not looking at the social habits and the economic habits that are leading into the issues at hand. You're just trying to put a Band-Aid on it and call it good, and then we'll revisit it later. And that's literally immigration reform in a nutshell. Yeah. Immigration reform has always been a talk, but yet it's always a talk. We're still like at a standstill. Nothing's really majorly moved or shifted. If anything, it's gotten worse. So why is that? Because you just can't get to the root of the problem and actually fix it, whatever it takes. But I think that's going to be a lot for people to think about. A lot of people need to realize, what's really going on it and actually find their voice into helping those things happen, because they can't just forget about it, because as soon as you forget about it, legislature moves on to something else. You know, that's why legislature takes so long. They talk about it, talk about it, talk about it, talk about it until it's done. Okay, they don't just talk about it, in the Senate and then they stop. What happens when it stops? It's done. You never hear about the bill again. If you want something to move, you keep talking until it moves all the way up and it's signed and it's put in paper and writing and it's signed off. And that's how we need to be intentional about the things that we want to change. We have to keep talking about it until there's a solution made. Once there's a solution made, then you move on to the next thing. You have to make sure it's not a temporary solution as well.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting because with the funding that you were talking about, I think Judy asked this question about, with Biden being president, he wants to lift the ceiling to 125,000 from the current 15,000. And what's interesting about the way that funding is structured is based off of how many refugees come here. So, and that's unfortunate, because what happens is, imagine how many families had already come here before, probably still needed services. And because we had a structure where they capped it the next year, and people's jobs and people's resources are based off of that, it stops us from actually investing in all of the families that have come here, as opposed to, I don't even actually understand the logic in the structure, because that means you're not going to adequately invest in refugee families in a way that they can, thrive the way everyone else would need to thrive. But that's actually pretty common for the American structure in general. Education should never be to be funded in a way that has to do with performance. If kids are not performing well, my logic would be fund those programs more. But that's not really what happens in the United States. You don't fund things that are struggling. You only fund things that are already doing well. And I don't know why that's the case, but I think that really is hurting a lot of our communities. And like Decca was saying, like we have people who have experienced trauma and have all these barriers, and they can contribute something. We're missing out on people that could contribute great new ideas, but because of all these barriers, they may not get a chance. If people don't intervene, may not get a chance to do that. I think the last thing that I will ask everyone is kind of like, what do you want people to kind of get out of this conversation? What's the last thing you would want people to hear from you?
Okay, I guess I will go again. First of all, I want to thank you and the organizers for this opportunity. Thank you very much for giving me a chance to get involved and kind of give my perspective. I do appreciate that. And I do appreciate everybody who took the time to listen and put their comments and put their, I really do appreciate. And this is the start, like I said, for hopefully more conversations to come. Now, having said that, I just want everybody who is tuned in with us tonight to know that immigrants in general, this country was built on immigrants. This country succeeds with the presence of immigrants, and it will succeed, and it will be the best nation in the world because of the immigrants and because of bringing the best of the best and bringing the uniqueness of everybody. So that's what makes this country great. And having said that, I want everybody to know that locally in our Kansas City area, there are lots and lots of immigrants who are working hard, who are, who love this country like everybody else, who want to see the best in this country, who wants to raise their children and their families and to be, important segment of the society. What they just want is to be given the opportunity. What they want is to be supported. What they want is to be guided and be shown how to succeed. And I'm sure everybody who's listening have something to contribute, whether it is mentoring youth, whether it's tutoring, kids, whether it's teaching, adults English, whether it's, you name it. There are so many things that could be done. And I want everybody to really take opportunity to connect with immigrants from all walks of life. And it's only when we know each other It's only when we understand each other, it's only when we respect our differences and we have a common goal of making this country a great country that we can really show the world what America is all about, and love each other and be kind to each other. I think that that's the message I came here with tonight, and that's the message I want to leave with. And again, thank you so much. I appreciate this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Well, I am just honored. I know we are pressing on time, so thank you for having me. Ladies, please take the opportunity, and everybody that's listening, get involved. Our numbers are available. We are here. And again, thank you so much. I know we are running a long time, so thank you again.
Thank you guys. So yes, I do want to thank Alive and Well, Namchat, Layla. I want to thank you guys so much for holding this. It's much needed. It's always going to be needed. And honestly, I'm proud of us, all of us, for finding our voices, for speaking out, and just for staying strong in the fight. Sometimes, it gets discouraging, but you always have to remember what's important, help you motivate. Just those things, we all know that, we love where we came from and we love where we are. And that's why we're fighting for it to be better. If we didn't care and if we didn't love where we are from, then we wouldn't be speaking. We wouldn't be bothered by anything at all. So I think it's important to say that we cannot stop the talks here. We have to keep going at it. We have to just keep encouraging each other and bringing everyone forth, no matter how hard it might be, because you're always going to run into people who are going to challenge you at times, and you don't have to necessarily always agree to disagree, But at the same time, make sure love is in the middle of every single thing you're doing. Because if you go about it with hate or any animosity or any bad feeling, it's not going to create a solution. So always remember, any questions that you ask, any things that you go forward and do it in love, and that will always bring the best solution. Again, thank you, everybody. Thank you, everyone that tuned in. And always remember that there's plenty of resources out there that you can get involved in to help.
I just want to say one thing. This is my home. This is where I belong. If you were to send me back, I would not survive. This is my home. This is United States of America. This is where we belong. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys all for speaking, Decca, Wasim, Samantha, and thank you guys all for joining us. Following this event, we'll be having post-event dialogues and direct action opportunities. So please sign up with the link in the comments, and soon to be posted on our page. All registered participants will receive the sign-up link via email. We'll be doing things like calling our elected officials, circulate relevant petitions, and have some training opportunities on local and national legislation. So we hope you can join us for all the future events. So thank you guys, and good night, everyone.